In the late 1970s and early 1980s, Briggs and Stratton employed about 11,000 people across the Milwaukee area. After the 2020 bankruptcy, about 300 hourly employees remained in the Milwaukee area. That smaller count leaves out salaried and other local staff. Yet, the industrial contraction is visible. Headquarters remained in Wauwatosa, while former factory buildings at 32nd and Center became apartments. Briggs announced hundreds of incoming Wauwatosa jobs in 2014, began production in January 2015, then announced 4 product lines would leave in June 2020. The Milwaukee area had regained factory work. Why could it not keep it? Briggs and Stratton began in Milwaukee in 1908, founded by Stephen Foster Briggs and Harold M. Stratton. In 1936, the company acquired the industrial complex near 32nd and Center that became one of its major North Side sites. Growth gave the workforce bargaining power. In 1937, nearly all of roughly 1,300 Briggs employees joined Local 232. Their first contract brought a wage increase, a grievance process, and limited seniority rights. When a strike lasted 15 weeks in 1950, the company accepted union demands that included a union shop. More production followed. A major Wauwatosa plant opened in the mid-1950s as demand grew for aluminum engines. Briggs' small gasoline engines went into lawnmowers and other outdoor equipment across the country. By the early 1980s, the Milwaukee area stood at the center of that engine business, and Briggs ranked 382nd on the Fortune 500 in 1981. That concentration made the next conflict consequential. Wauwatosa held engine lines. The region held roughly 11,000 Briggs jobs, and Local 232 represented the bargaining base around them. In 1983, a Local 232 strike lasted 13 weeks and ended after Briggs threatened to hire permanent replacements. Accounts of the years that followed describe wage freezes, a 2-tier wage system, and a 30% decline in workers' real income between 1983 and 1995. Workers gave ground, but the old job base kept shrinking. Briggs opened a non-union plant in Murray, Kentucky, in 1984, using a facility provided by the city. Reporting and union history describe a broader movement of manufacturing away from Milwaukee area union plants. Briggs said its later production decisions cut costs and consolidated similar work more efficiently. Union and investigative accounts argued that moves continued after concessions, and that union avoidance shaped management's approach. The record does not settle every motive. It does establish the result. Concessions did not secure the Milwaukee area's old job base. Then the direction changed. In 2009, Briggs moved home Stanby production and research and development from Watertown to Wauwatosa. In July 2014, it announced the closure of its McDonough, Georgia, factory and the transfer of riding tractors, pressure washers, and snow throwers to Wauwatosa. The move added 220 full-time jobs and 150 seasonal positions. Production began in Wauwatosa in January 2015. Engines and outdoor equipment were moving through the local plant again, with hundreds of jobs attached to the work. The contraction had not become permanent, one-way traffic. Briggs would still consolidate substantial production in the Milwaukee area when its plans pointed there. But in June 2020, roughly 5 years after production began, Briggs announced that lawn tractors, residential zero-turn mowers, snow throwers, and pressure washers would move from Wauwatosa to company facilities in New York. More than 200 Wauwatosa jobs were cut. Pressure washers and snow throwers had come north from Georgia. Now they appeared on the outgoing list. The plant that had received work was sending it east. The reversal arrived during a financial crisis built over years of losses, debt, and declining sales. The pandemic tightened that crisis, and Briggs filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in July 2020, only weeks after announcing the New York transfer. KPS Capital Partners acquired the business later that year. Bankruptcy did not begin the Milwaukee area's contraction. It marked the late stage of one already underway. The address remained even as the production network narrowed. In early 2022, Briggs sold 3 Wauwatosa buildings to Phoenix investors for $24 million and leased them back. Headquarters and other local functions continued there. The Germantown Distribution Center closed that April. Then, production at Wauwatosa reached its endpoint. In 2023, Briggs announced about 160 layoffs as home standby production moved to Alabama and engine component work moved to Missouri. Manufacturing at the Wauwatosa location ceased. Headquarters remained, but the factory work did not. Briggs was one of several manufacturers that contracted or closed along the 30th Street Industrial Corridor. That multi-employer decline cannot be divided into a precise Briggs share. But one 7-acre site shows the company's physical aftermath directly. At 32nd and Center, 6 buildings covered roughly 380,000 square feet. Operations ceased in the mid-1980s, and the complex remained out of industrial use for decades. It was separate from the Wauwatosa property where the later production transfers occurred. Community within the corridor turned the old complex into 197 affordable apartments with mixed commercial and community space. The redevelopment was reported at $68 million. Its brick walls and industrial form survived. But the site's manufacturing history survived in another way. In March 2023, elevated vapor from trichloroethylene, an industrial solvent, was detected in 4 of 56 occupied East Block apartments. On March 25, more than 150 residents at the North 32nd Street building were ordered to evacuate. The West Block recorded lower concentrations and was not evacuated. The difference between those 2 blocks defined the immediate response. The evacuation covered the East Block rather than the entire development. But for the residents ordered out, the site's industrial past had become a present-tense housing problem. The site carried contamination from decades of industrial manufacturing. A vapor mitigation system was installed under Wisconsin Environmental and Milwaukee Health oversight. The agencies found that system effective and concluded that it protected residents from exposure above the action level. They also found that the emergency order had been satisfied. The East Block reopened in June 2025 after roughly 2 years. Monitoring continued. The sequence was clear. Mitigation worked well enough for agencies to approve a return, while continuing tests remained part of that return. Reopening did not mean the industrial contamination had simply disappeared. Residents came back after engineering work, testing, and public supervision reduced the vapor risk enough for agencies to allow occupancy again. Making the complex usable also took layers of city, state, and federal housing and brownfield support. Private investment created homes and mixed-use space, while public institutions absorbed part of the cost of adapting the former industrial property. That investment restored use to the buildings, but it did not replace the regional payroll once attached to Briggs production. The contrast remains unresolved across the Milwaukee area. One former factory complex holds 197 apartments, while the Wauwatosa headquarters continues without the manufacturing that once surrounded it. The city found a second use for 7 acres at 32nd and Center. It did not recover the Milwaukee area factory system that once put about 11,000 people to work.